production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
The impact of tourism on Memphis, now and in the future, tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined tonight by Kevin Kane, President and CEO of the Memphis Convention and Visitors Bureau. Thanks for being here again.
Glad to be here.
Along with Bill Dries, senior reporter with the Memphis Daily News. So we've got all kinds of things to go through, from convention centers to hotels and so on. Right now for you, the most important thing in terms of tourism that's going on in Memphis or that needs to be going on in Memphis?
Well, you know, the governor just released the state of the tourism economy throughout all of Tennessee, and last year was a record year. I think tourism was up over 5% across the state. It's in Memphis, it's a $3.2 billion industry, supports 35,000 jobs. Obviously, over 11 million visitors from literally all over the world come to Memphis and Shelby County on an annual basis. So tourism and hospitality is a very important part of the fabric of the economic landscape of this whole region. And we're so fortunate because we have so many diverse, unique, rich, one-of-a-kind amenities that, you know, really makes Memphis and this area a must-see place on the minds of tourists from all over the world.
People have talked for years, I mean, you've talked before on the show about the convention center. The convention center is too small for the really big conventions. It doesn't seem like there's a real will to spend $1 billion on a new convention center in Memphis. But what's the state right now of the convention center? There's some renovations going on, and then go 10 years out. Where do you think the convention center will be?
Well, you know, I think that the missing piece of the puzzle for our industry is what I would call a first-class competitive convention complex. Memphis Cook Convention Center was built in 1973. When it was completed, it was the 18th largest convention center in the United States. It was handicapped from the very beginning because at that time in the 70s, there were not a lot of hotels in downtown Memphis. So, you know, you had this big convention center at the time. It was a big convention center. As I said, it's the 18th largest facility in the United States. Did not have a lot of downtown hotel support. So it struggled from the very beginning. Well, you fast forward to where we are today, the convention industry, I think our building is not even now in the top 150 in size in this country. Obviously, you don't have to look any farther than just 200 miles east of here and see what the Music City Center has done for part of the renaissance of what's taken place in Nashville. Obviously, since that building was completed in 2013, real estate prices in downtown Nashville have exploded. Their convention industry has quadrupled, and the hotel development scene there is one of the most robust in all of the United States.
It's amazing. I was up there. We have a newspaper up there. You almost can't get a room, and the rooms you get are unbelievably expensive because not enough. They're building so many different.
Now, I'm not suggesting that Memphis we need to go build a Music City Center, but obviously our building was finished in 1973. It's 43 years old now, and there's parts of that building that look like it's 43 years old, and unfortunately, you know, the competitiveness of that building, there's a lot of challenges there because we're in a very competitive market, and convention centers of today, and if you've been through the new building in Nashville, convention centers of today now have more of a hotel feel to them. Back in the 60s and 70s, and probably even into the early 80s, convention centers were just big public spaces, concrete block buildings, very little glass, very little light coming in from the outside. That's all changed now. If you look at buildings all across the country, there's lots of glass. You're connected to the outdoors. We got such an opportunity because we sit on the Mississippi River.
So can that be done with that building within the?
We've already done it. We've already done it at some point. If you look at the Cannon Center expansion of 2003, we did build a new ballroom for the convention center. And to the west of the ballroom, there's a bank of 5 breakout meeting rooms, about 10,000 square feet of meeting space that is all glass that overlooks the
that's
Mississippi
nice.
River.
Right,
You know, and people fight for those rooms.
Yeah.
And but you know, we've just got some deficiencies that we need to deal with, and we are dealing with those. We raised the hotel lodging tax a little over a year ago, and we're going to begin construction probably in the next 6 or 7 months on a $60 million facelift inside and out.
Will it expand space or just upgrade?
A
the
little
look
expansion
and-
of space.
but-
There's an area where we're going to build some more breakout
Yeah.
meeting rooms because, you know, the world has changed in the last 20 years. Conventions, meetings, and trade shows now are more dependent on breakout meeting space, high quality breakout meeting space.
Yeah.
That is the one area where we're probably the most efficient in because
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of our breakout meeting rooms, obviously, because they're in the lower part of the building. They are low ceilings, have columns running through them. So, you know, we live in a digitally technology-driven world now where audio-visual presentations and stuff are just the norm, not the exception. And so a lot of our breakout meeting rooms are kind of handicapped for that. So we are going to address that. But obviously, we know that we know what we need to do in the big picture, and that's to really expand the building considerably.
But so the 60 million, that's off the hotel tax. That's not a property tax increase. Just so
No.
people understand. To go, and then I'll go to Bill. But what you just said, the future to really a dramatic, increase in space would take what in terms of funding?
Well, it would probably take.
Music City Center was $1 billion.
It was about $675 million, and so very expensive.
Yeah.
But if you look at what that has led to,
Yeah.
it's led to probably a couple of $1 billion of private investment
Yeah.
in hotels and other amenities that go to support that. So, you know, that's where we are right now. We think that we have that capabilities to do the same thing here in Memphis.
Okay. All right, Bill.
So we are just about to have, I think, a full rollout of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital's ambitious plans just to the north of the convention center, actually probably all around the convention center, as it turns out. What does the convention center's role become in what's going to be about $1 billion of just capital spending that St. Jude plans on doing in that area?
Well, obviously, we're an important partner to St. Jude. They are one of the primary users in our building. And from a local standpoint, they're probably in the Cook Convention Center 6 or 7 times a year, so throughout the whole year. So they're a regular user of the building. If you look at their campus and you look at everything that they've done, it's a first-class facility. And their expansion is going to be first-class as well. And, you know, we need to be doing the same thing at the convention center.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot on this program, and we've written a lot in our paper about the whole motel situation. We have a lot of smaller hotel projects that are underway or on the books or on the drawing board at this point. But my understanding is that doesn't really get us where we need to be completely in terms of the motel rooms for these bigger meetings.
You know, the downtown marketplace is the healthiest market for our hotels throughout the entire Mid-South region. Excuse me, 75% occupancy, $150 plus rates. A lot of our hotels are way over $200 a night. If you backed out Sunday night out of that equation, our downtown hotels are running in the mid-80s in occupancy. It's unheard of. It's a very strong market. As a result of that, there's a lot of hotel developers all across the country that are looking at Memphis. Unfortunately, it's all small, limited service properties. And, you know, we need another big convention-sized hotel similar to what the Peabody or the Sheraton has to offer now at 460 and 600 rooms, respectively. So, you know, we desperately need another big full-service convention hotel in the proximity of St. Jude and the convention center, hopefully with a lot of meeting space that would potentially even tie back into the convention center that would help offset some of our deficiencies of a lack of first-class meeting space. And that's one of the things that we're exploring right now with the city to see, you know, is there a possibility of us doing something like that?
From the city's point of view, you'd be looking for them to do incentives that target, that helped a project like that happen, or what?
You never know. Some cities actually own their convention center hotel.
Yeah.
Denver, the Hyatt in Denver is owned by Hotel Authority, which is basically owned by the city of Denver. Indianapolis, Dallas, I could go right down the list.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cities where If you look outside of the Las Vegas Strip in the last 15 or 20 years, there's probably not a hotel 500 rooms or larger outside of the few Gaylord complexes that are around the country that are built in downtown areas anywhere in the country that either do not have a substantial amount of public incentives or the public owns them themselves and just hires a hotel management company to manage them for them.
Does it worry you, or what have your conversations with the new administration been? Strickland has said, and I just want to paraphrase him, but this kind of let's slow down in the era of big projects. I mean, Wharton was in some ways known for some of these big projects that got done. Strickland has come in and he said again and again and again, brilliant at the basics, potholes, police service, all the kind of bread and butter issues. What are your conversations with Strickland and his administration about those kind of big ticket, big project investments on the part of the city?
I think the mayor, first of all, the mayor's a big thinker. His platform is let's be brilliant at the basics. And I totally concur with that philosophy. At the same time, Mayor Strickland and his team are certainly looking at the future of Memphis. What opportunities will there be for us to grow our economy and grow jobs? And obviously, tourism and hospitality is one of those industries that does that. Everything that we're talking about and that we're analyzing currently with the convention center or the future of the convention center will not be paid for with general fund property tax dollars. We're very much dependent on the hospitality revenue streams, and there's a number of those revenue streams. There's a tourism development zone. There's the city hotel lodging tax. There's a county hotel lodging tax. Now we have a tourism improvement district fund that helps fund the CVB. So when you parlay those opportunities along with TIFs and other things, other governmental mechanisms you can put in place, we feel that we are going to articulate a master plan for conventions in the hospitality industry in downtown Memphis that do not encroach on the general property tax fund. So, we're kind of in a unique situation where our industry can do that because our industry kind of does tax itself. We tax the visitors to provide these amenities. I mean,
and is there enough visitors, enough to getting back to the future of a big expansion of the convention center? I mean, all that assortment of incentives, are there enough visitors to pay for a big, $100 million, $200 million, multiple, $100 million expansion?
I don't think there's any question there's enough revenue and enough visitors to generate that. As I said, it's a $3.2 billion industry that generates a lot of tax revenues.
So what if it's not a general fund? And I get that, and you're right. I mean, that's the thing that people get that makes headlines, property tax increases, and that gets mayors fired and not reelected and so on. If that money's out there, if the $3.2 billion dollars, why not move forward quickly with an expansion of the convention center?
Well, I think obviously. Any expansion of the convention center, and I'm not saying our convention center needs to be triple the size. Bigger is not always better, and it needs to be right size. We need to deal with a lot of the deficiencies that we currently have. For example, our 125,000 square feet exhibit hall is probably all this market needs for right now. I'm not sure if we had a 250,000 square foot exhibit hall that would help us, because you know what, if we don't have the large hotels to support that, then we're wasting our time building the space. It's almost a chicken and egg. You got to really have the infrastructure to support any growth that you would have with the convention center.
Okay, Bill.
In the meantime, next month, the guest house at Graceland will open, a 450-room, more than $90 million resort hotel in Whitehaven, just north of Graceland. And the impact of that, I mean, where do you even begin to talk about what that's going to do for Elvis Presley Boulevard and Whitehaven as well as Graceland?
Well, not only is that hotel significant, I think I've even said it on this show in point past that it's the largest hotel constructed in Memphis since the Peabody was built in the 1920s at 450 rooms. So it's a big deal, and it's a big deal for Whitehaven. It's a big deal for Elvis Presley Enterprises. And obviously, Heartbreak Hotel, which had the distinction of being the highest occupied percentage occupancy, albeit it was only 135 rooms, in the state of Tennessee, running an annual occupancy of well north of 90%. That hotel was in dire need of some improvements, just like the convention center. And this beautiful new guest house at Graceland is going to be something that everybody's going to be very proud of. I think they're going to run very strong occupancies. I think they can kind of fulfill their own market needs with the Elvis visitor. And across the street, they've already broken ground, as you guys know, on a unbelievable new whole experiential plaza of an assortment of everything that will relocate a lot of those facilities that you see, the car museum, the ticket pavilion, and all that you see along Elvis Presley Boulevard. That will become kind of a grassy front lawn, and the new facility will be set back. So, real opportunity there too.
Mm-hmm. So this is the Graceland Plaza or Graceland West is $45 million. So altogether, these two phases are $140 million north of that of development by Graceland, and it's pretty huge. I mean, Graceland is obviously going to change, is already changing. I mean, we talked about this back in August because a lot of people say, well, Elvis Presley died almost 40 years ago. What happens as his fans age? You're seeing younger fans who are coming here for not only the Graceland experience, but Stax, Sun Records, Beale Street, the River, all of that.
The music brand in Memphis really is what makes us special and unique. And we are able to attract visitors from all over the planet because of our great musical heritage. And we have a tremendous future, a future that really will never die because it's culture, it's history, and at the same time, music is kind of a timeless, people still like music from 50, 60, 70, 100 years ago. So we're in a unique situation here with that. And we have an unbelievable collection of music properties that makes Memphis a kind of a must-see stop for music lovers from all over the world. And, most people like music. So we've got an enormous amount of population to take advantage of in respect to that.
Bill you mentioned Beale Street, the new, and I'm going to be honest, I get confused, the layers of management authorities and so on, but Beale Street has not yet selected a manager for the authority. Are you part of that? Are you on the board?
I'm not part of that.
You have a vested interest, obviously, from
yes.
a tourism point of view. So what's going on with Beale Street? What would you like to see happening with Beale Street in terms of the management of it?
I think that the Beale Street Development Authority has obviously taken their time to make sure that they put the right management group in place to kind of oversee the present and the future of opportunities for Beale Street. Earlier this year, the city, the Downtown Commission kind of manages it now, and the Merchants Association put in a Beale Street Bucks program for Saturday nights when Saturday nights would get so overcrowded with people, it became unsafe, became uncomfortable. Obviously, you would have some issues that would result from that. The programs work splendidly. They've suspended it now for the winter months. It'll pick it back up in the spring. But immediately, it kind of brought order to the streets. So you just didn't have such a crush of people where just people felt uncomfortable. And if a bottle broke, people would start running and it would cause problems. So, I think Beale Street's got a bright future. I think what the Beale Street Development Authority is doing, that they're doing the right thing and really making sure that they get the right group or people in place to manage that. And hopefully, in the not too distant future, there will be some decisions that would be permanently made on that.
Well, stay with the downtown with the river. Big river crossing, the Harahan Bridge.
Huge.
And I went out there. I think Bill, you were out there recently. It's amazing. I mean, it really is. And it's hard to describe this. Just the simple act of walking across the Mississippi on a nice day in a safe location with trains, and you can, there are barges going under. What will that mean tourism-wise?
Enormous.
Yeah.
In fact, if you look at what's happened at Shelby Farms, that transformation, the Green Line, which I think has exceeded everybody's expectations since it started, and now the Great River Crossing, which is really just caps off this unbelievable linkage from the east all the way to the west through the city, over to Arkansas, eventually down to New Orleans. Charlie McVeigh's vision of taking this, to points unseen. It's a game changer for us, and I'm a lifelong Memphian. I've never been able to walk across the Mississippi River, Memphis. I can't wait to have the opportunity to do that. and it's going to be this whole outdoor cultural, outdoor recreational tourism properties that we now have that didn't even exist here just a few years ago is enormous for us.
People often, I think, and we talk about it, write about it as being, these are things for Memphians, and that's true, the Green Line and so on. But we've had people on the show before who've said that once you get a bike ride that's 50 miles, that's sort of a magic number, then you get tourism. Then you get people who will come just to ride their bike across the river and go to Shelby Farms. Will you all start, I don't know how much marketing of those amenities you do now,
we're already working with all of those, that leadership group. We're working with them we've done bike maps, we've got online presence on the trails, on Green Line, et cetera. Obviously, we're all over. We're partners with the folks at Great River Crossing and, of course, our friends at Shelby Farms. We can't wait, and it's already starting to happen. Cycling magazines around the world are talking about what's going on in Memphis. I think we got a very bright future when it comes to that.
Okay. Bill, 5 minutes left.
So let's talk about the Pyramid and Bass Pro Shops. That opened up in May 2015, so 2 million visitors, I think, at the 1 year mark. But there's been some talk that perhaps Bass Pro Shops is having a different experience here because the store is so unique at the Pyramid from what they've seen in other more conventional locations. What have you seen in terms of who their customers are and what they're doing when they come here?
Well, first of all, it's 3 million visitors in the first year, not 2. Which was exceeded
Bill
everybody's
gets to make a mistake once every 5 years.
Well, I just wanted to clarify that.
Once every 5 years.
I do think that I think they've admitted that their per customer spend is not quite what they hoped it would be. They're analyzing that because they do such tremendous research and they know their customers so well. And they are kind of wondering if the fact that there is so much to see and experience that is not purchasing inside the Pyramid, from the observation deck to the bowling alley to all the things in between, that maybe they're putting too much in the way of the pure shopping experience of people spending money on boats and hunting gear, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm sure as sophisticated and as great as Bass Pro is, and they're one of the best, they're probably the best in the business at doing this, they will make sure that they get the store exactly where they need it. I think they're very pleased. I've heard nothing but high remarks from customers, seem to love the experience, and the Bass Pro officials I've talked to seem very pleased with their first year. Might not have done everything in revenue that they were hoping, but it did do everything in revenue that the city was projecting. It exceeded whatever projections the city put in place through the tourism development zone. It's exceeding that. And obviously from a pedestrian standpoint, just people walking through the doors, they're blowing those numbers away. So
do you guys measure what the impact on hotels and people coming in and staying, or is it really just, it's not a huge impact on hotels?
We can't really tell. Okay. I mean, it's another attractor to this area. We don't know how many of those folks are coming in, spending 3 or 4 hours in the store and then getting back on the highway and continuing on their journey, versus coming in and say, we're going to spend the night in Memphis because we're going to go spend a whole day or 2 days at Bass Pro. They have their own hotel. Yeah. They have a 115-room property right inside the old mezzanine level of the Pyramid. Beautiful hotel, first-class hotel. And, I think they're doing very well with the property there, too.
Well, State, in that area, Mud Island, there was an RFP put out between, I guess, Riverfront Development Corp., but you were on the selection committee about somebody taking over Mud Island. Andy Cates, who's been on the show, who's, talked about his family's been involved in a lot of different efforts. He pulled out and somewhat angrily that it just felt like he wasn't getting the support for a complete redevelopment of Mud Island. Where does that stand?
Well, I think Andy... First of all, Andy had a great plan, and he's been very successful with his outdoor recreation, and it kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of this other outdoor recreation opportunities that are developing throughout all of Shelby County. It's a process, and the city is analyzing a lot of things right now as it relates to St. Jude expansion, the future of the Pinch. Obviously, we're a big part of that with the convention center. You got Mud Island that is probably an underutilized asset sitting over there. So there's a lot of moving parts, and unfortunately, there's some things that will take some time. The city's looking at the tourism development zone. They're talking to the state about some things.
Well, is that part of it, that there are a bunch of players who want to pick into this pool of incentive money of whatever part of it, and there's just too many people trying to get in on that?
I don't even really think that's the problem.
Okay.
I think right now the city is trying to figure out what opportunities they have for what types of incentives, what types of what will they be able to bring to the table, primarily through surplus tourism development zone revenues and the future of the tourism development zone in that area. So I think the city is working with state officials and looking at a lot of different things to figure out what they can do. And unfortunately, that's a process. You can't snap your fingers and get all the answers that you need instantly. And I think the administration is moving as quickly as they can to try to sort that out. And the important thing is this is our future. So however long it takes to make sure that you're positioned right for the future, I think you need to do that due diligence.
We could have talked about that for another 20 minutes, but we're out of time. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Bill. And thank you all for joining us. Join us again next week.